semi-bluff all his draws, and he's going to raise for value with all the hands that beat us. So his range actually crushes us, but we're going to be folding the best hand an exploitable amount of the time, and we're just not getting value. So if we check, we can induce bluffs with our hand. For example, 9s plus might actually come out and bet to quote-unquote protect their hand, though you should realize that there's no such thing in a cash game as protecting your hand. But they might bet it anyway, even though they'll never get called by worse. So we can check call, induce a lot of bluffs there. Maybe 7x bets. All those hands that we wanted value from against the first guy, we're now getting value from by inducing, by value owning or inducing bluffs. So this is what our range might look like. Notice that there's a lot of these. There's a lot of things to take into consider. What can I profitably stack off with? Like, can we stack off with ace high with the flush draws? Because our opponent's going to be shoving a lot of worse draws. So ace high and king high and queen high flush draws, these are all like just great hands. But whether we want to bet call king high flush draws, it doesn't do as well as ace high flush draws against our opponent's shoving range, but it's still doing pretty well. Queen high and jack high, your equity's dropping more and more every hand. So somewhere in there, you can start check calling, like adding to your check call range a few flush draws, because we don't have that much value that we need to balance. We only have trips and boats, so you know, we have like a slew of draws, just like our opponent. We can throw some of those into our check calling range so that our river range is balanced when it comes 3 flush, so we can check raise the river or protect our 2 pair hands like aces and stuff like that. Now when it comes 3 flush, he can't really bluff every time because we do have flushes in our range. So you know, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. But generally, you're betting draws and really, really good hands instead of like everything. Again, yeah, notice how much harder it is to structure your polarized range. I mean, there are all those considerations that come in. You're just not betting the top X%. You have to come up with your nut range, you have to come up with your middling equity range, and you have to know where that middling equity range ends and what constitutes air. And if you're playing against Phil Ivey, being capable of someone bluffing this turn will at least make him think about all these things, which is going to make him think a little bit harder and make his life more difficult. Of course, he's Phil Ivey, so he's going to beat you anyway. But you can at least make him try. What does this reveal about semi-bluffing the turn? That it's awesome. You should probably be doing it. And you need to be careful, because if you're going to semi-bluff the turn, you have to realize what your flop raising range is. For example, on this described board, I'm probably going to raise all my sets on the flop. Granted, this doesn't really matter because I'm playing against you know, a human being, not some range calculation machine. So he's probably going to believe, for some reason, that I have, you know, value hands in my range. But that said, if you're playing against Phil Ivey, it's not necessarily the way it'll be. So realize that that equilibrium depends on having both bluffs and value hands in your range. And if you raise all your value on the flop and semi-bluff, like your entire turn raising range is semi-bluffs, then you're kind of doing a really bad job at balancing your range, and your opponent should just bet call all the time, and with a rather wide range. But that said, you can bluff the flop. Like, for example, I said I would bluff spades on that flop. I would semi-bluff right away with spades, but with the backdoor flush draw and straight draw, or just the backdoor flush draw, I'm generally bluffing weaker draws on the turn because I believe there to be more fold equity on the turn. I'm value raising the flop with most of my hands, but all my backdoor value hands are going to get raised on the turn. For example, 8x on that board is going to get raised on the turn, not the flop. Backdoor spades, gut shots, are going to get raised on the turn if I turn some kind of gut shot. Credit, I didn't on that board. But, you know, there's usually something that brings some kind of equity to a range on the turn that also brings a semi-bluffing opportunity. So those ranges can balance themselves. Granted, there is more fold equity on the turn, and if you notice an opponent is value betting very thin on the turn, you can actually wait for all of your semi-bluffs and all of your value raises. For example, if I had a set and I was playing against Bart Hansen, or if I had spades and I was playing against Bart Hansen, I would wait for the turn regardless of the board texture. I mean, not regardless, but on this board, I would definitely wait for the turn, because he's going to be folding much more often when he has when I have a semi-bluff, and I'm going to be allowed to value own him a decent portion of the time when I'm raising for value, because he's giving me the extra bet already by betting the turn within value. He's going to be semi-bluffing the turn as well. He might come over the top with the ace-high flush draw on occasion, so when I'm semi-bluffing that's going to be bad, but when I'm value raising it's going to be good. Basically I would just shift everything to the turn against someone who's going to thin value bet the turn and punish them for doing so, because that is an exploitative move, him value betting the turn. And he's doing it incorrectly against me because I'm capable of semi-bluffing the turn. So I'm going to shift all of my semi-bluffs to the turn, and I'm also going to shift all of my value to the turn and just exploit the crap out of him. And notice that when you semi-bluff the turn, you're also protecting hands that you would call with, assuming you have position. Because when your opponent is deciding whether or not he can value bet, he needs to take this into consideration. And if he doesn't, then whatever, you're still semi-bluffing the turn and exploiting him. But theoretically, if you were going to call with 9s plus here, your opponent's going to check a decent range to you. So you can check it down and get your showdown value with all these middling equity hands. So those are protected just by the fact that you have such a wide turn raising range. So you get to showdown when you want to much easier. And remember, there are a lot of factors that go into whether or not it's a profitable play, and it can't just be a profitable play, it needs to be your best play. Like for 300 big blinds deep, I'm probably just going to call with a draw in an attempt to, overflush someone on the river or something. But there's a lot of questions to be asked when you're deciding to use this range, and you should take the time to figure it all out. I guess that's it for the video. That is Incredibro. I really hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. I am now off to my engagement party, so see you guys later.